Welcome to my WWE Hell in a Cell 2021 review video. So what we'll do is we'll go through what happened in each match at last night's pay-per-view, then I'll give my opinion and a star rating. Quick disclaimer, of course, obviously the star ratings that I give are subjective. You might not agree. Please let me know your thoughts on the show in the comments section down below. So we'll start with the pre-show, and it's Mandy Rose against Natalya. Of course, they both faced off against each other with their tag partners in a backstage segment on Raw this past week, where Mandy and Dana were trying to have a photo shoot of some sort, and there was lots of noise going on, and it was Natalya and Tamina training in the ring because they're wrestlers and that's what they do. But Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke took offense to this, and then they had a bit of a melee, and that's led to this match between Mandy Rose and Natalya on the pre-show. So we start off with a lock-up, and both women trying to get the upper hand. Mandy eventually gets Natalya in a pinning predicament for an early 2 count. After tons of back and forth, Mandy gets another pin on Natalya for a 1 count this time. Then Natalya starts to work the arm of Mandy, but Mandy eventually gets to the ropes, and Natalya finds her upper body somehow tangled between the middle and top rope. And this allows Mandy to take the advantage by pulling on Natalya's arm and pulling her throat first off the top rope. Not off the top rope as in off the top rope, but off the top rope as in the rope's here and the throat goes like that. It's a great example. Mandy follows this up with some stomps in the corner, then gets another 1 count from a snapmare takedown, and then a 2 count from a right forearm. Mandy locks in the body scissors on Natalya, but Natalya reverses it temporarily and gets some shots in on Mandy before Mandy locks in a modified guillotine. Natty stands with the guillotine locked in and slams Mandy to the mat, but she takes too long to get back to her feet, allowing Mandy the time to get back on top, and both superstars take turns with putting the other in a stretch submission. Natalya finally creates some distance from Mandy and manages to hit a slingshot suplex off the top rope, followed by a dropkick for the 2 count. Natty then throws Mandy into the corner, places her on the top rope, but Mandy fights out and hits a top rope dropkick on Natty for the 2 count. Mandy looks for a double underhook suplex. Natty reverses and looks for a suplex of her own, but Mandy gets an inside cradle for a 2 count. Natalya responds with a lariat for a 2 count of her own, and then drags Mandy up to her feet by her hair, but Mandy manages to wriggle into a backslide for a 2 count. She then follows up with a knee to the face of Natalya for another near fall. Mandy looks shocked at this point. She goes for another knee, but her foot is caught, and Natalya tries the lariat, but Mandy ducks. They swap waist control, then swap pinfalls for a 2 count. Natalya almost gets an armbar in, but Mandy gets to the ropes. Mandy hits a double leg takedown, and Natty goes for a pin, but Natty bridges out of it nicely and then gets Mandy on the mat. She's going for the sharpshooter. It gets locked in, and Mandy has no option but to tap. Natalya wins. A decent match to kick things off on the pre-show. Very back and forth, but as has been the case for the Hart family over the years, the sharpshooter gets the job done. I'm going to give this one 3 stars. A nice way to start the night. Decent little match. Nothing too sensational, but a good match nonetheless. Now it's time for the main show to start. For this, the final pay-per-view to be held in the Thunderdome. And we're going to start things off with Bianca Belair versus Bayley inside the cell for the SmackDown Women's Championship. And I've gone for the shock victory for Bayley in this one. So we start off with some mouthing off by both. Belair repeatedly slams Bayley to the mat before hitting a clothesline. Bayley then rolls to the outside to collect herself. Bayley fakes getting back into the ring and forcing Belair to come and collect her. She tries to drag Bayley back in, but she's pulled down onto the rope herself. This gives Bayley enough time to search under the ring for some plunder to use. She pulls out 2 chairs and returns to the ring. Bayley has a chair in hand, swings it at Belair, but Belair drops down and gets 2 1 counts. Bayley still has the chair in her hand though, and Bianca whips her hair several times off the chair, eventually getting the advantage by pushing Bayley into the turnbuckle with the chair and drop kicking the chair into the face of Bayley. I've said a chair a lot in the past few sentences. Chair, chair, chair. Belair then places Bayley on the top rope, hits her with a few right arms, looks for the superplex, but Bayley fights out, swings at Belair, but Belair, using her gymnastic skills, backflips off the top to avoid it, then runs back up to the top rope. She's looking for the superplex again, but Bayley drops down to the apron this time and smashes Belair face first off the top of the ring post. Belair is then sent shoulder first into the other ring post, then Bayley hits her with the knee and gets 2 counts. Belair is now favouring her left arm, which Bayley starts targeting. This gets her several near falls. Bayley now heads outside the ring and lifts the steps into the ring. They're very heavy though, a lot heavier than Drew McIntyre makes them out to be later in the night. Bayley drops a couple of elbows on a prone Belair, then drags her hair onto the steps and stands on it, bragging for a few moments. Belair drags Bayley off the steps, causing a leg to hit the steps, but Bayley hits Belair with another knee for the 2 count. Bayley then ties Belair's hair to the bottom rope, not the only occasion that she ties Belair's hair to something, but we'll get onto that in a little bit. Bayley tries to kick Belair, but Belair trips Bayley with her hair, and Bayley falls face first onto the steps and rolls out of the ring. Belair manages to free herself from the rope, then throws the steps outside the ring towards Bayley, but Bayley manages to avoid them. Belair then kicks Bayley from inside the ring into the steel surroundings of the cell before grating her face against it. Bayley gets out of this by biting Belair on the wrist. It's kendo stick time now as Bayley grabs one from under the ring and hits Belair with it. She follows this up with a sunset flip powerbomb into the cell, which looks very brutal. Bayley is going under the ring once again and pulls out some more kendo sticks. This time it's 2 kendo sticks sort of attached to each other to make a really long one. She's done it before. I'm not sure if it was in last year's Hell in a Cell match, but she's definitely done it before, and she sort of sets it up between the cell and the ring. But this gives Belair enough time to get back to her feet. Belair starts chasing Bayley into the ring and out of the ring, and it ends with Belair putting Bayley spine first through the kendo sticks on the outside of the ring. Belair rolls Bayley back into the ring for a 2 count and then grabs a chair and starts smashing Bayley with it. Belair runs towards Bayley with the chair, but Bayley kicks it into Belair's face. Bayley now stands the chair up in the ring and starts yanking Belair's arm through the gap in the chair repeatedly. Bayley sits down on the chair and ties Belair's hair to the bottom rung of the chair. I told you it wasn't the only occasion where Belair's hair is getting tied to something. Bayley then pulls Belair's hair whilst kicking her body away from her. Belair hits Bayley with a right while Bayley is gloating, then hits the chair, which is still attached to her hair, into Bayley's knee as Bayley is running at her. Bianca frees her hair once more from the chair and then takes Bayley down at the knee before tying her hair to Bayley's wrist. Third time that the hair is being tied to something. Bayley's now begging the referee to open the door on the outside, claiming she's done, but Belair just laughs and kicks her face first off the cell door, then proceeds to walk around the outside of the ring, throwing Bayley into the cell as she goes. Bayley tries to crawl under the ring, but Belair drags her out, only to be met by a ladder to the midsection. Bayley puts the ladder into the ring and rolls back in herself, but Belair has got hold of the other end of the ladder. She tries to push Bayley into the turnbuckle, but Bayley avoids it, and Belair gets knocked down. Bayley places Belair in the middle of the ladder and slams the other part of the ladder down on her before standing on it. Bayley hits the rose plant, but hurts her own knee in doing so. She hits it off the ladder. This means that she's slow to the pin and only gets a 2 count. Both women then swap 2 counts, with Bayley even trying to use the rope as leverage, but Belair hits Bayley face first into the turnbuckle, places the ladder on top of her. She goes up top, but Bayley rolls out of the way of the splash. Belair rolls through and hits a senton on Bayley on the ladder. Belair then hits the KOD on Bayley on the ladder for the 3 count. Bianca Belair wins and retains the WWE SmackDown Women's Championship, and this was a very entertaining match, a great use of the weapons and their surroundings, and beautiful focusing on a body part from both competitors. At this point, I'm a little bit concerned because it means, at least in my head, that Drew or Charlotte are going to be winning later in the night, and it also means that I'm 0-1 for the predictions. This match gets 4 stars, a very enjoyable match. Next, we get a short post-match interview with Bianca Belair, who says she can't forgive Bayley for laughing in her face. Then we see Lashley and MVP with his groupies backstage, and we see Alexa Bliss with an ominous message talking about surprises. And I thought maybe we were going to see The Fiend tonight after this. We shall see. But next up, it's Rollins versus Cesaro. And I, of course, have Cesaro for this one. Thought he surely had to be winning it, but we'll see what happens. So Rollins attacks Cesaro while Cesaro is making his way down the ramp. They fight into the ring and the bell finally rings. Cesaro hits a slam early on and follows up with a big back body drop. Cesaro places Rollins on the apron and hits him with a big boot, knocking him to the outside. Rollins is thrown into the barricade, then met with an uppercut before Cesaro rolls Rollins back into the ring. Cesaro goes up top and drops an axe handle on Rollins for a 1 count. After eating some shots in the corner, Seth manages to drop Cesaro into the middle turnbuckle to take the advantage and eventually hit a DDT to Cesaro for a 1 count. Rollins hits Cesaro with several right hands, some knees to the midsection, and tries to suplex Cesaro, but Cesaro reverses it and hits Rollins with a suplex of his own. Rollins launches Cesaro to the outside and hits him with a knee to the side of the head off the apron. Seth hits another knee from the top rope back in the ring for a very near fall. Seth continues hitting Cesaro with right hands to keep him down. Rollins goes for a kick, but Cesaro hits him with an uppercut. Rollins knocks Cesaro down, but Cesaro starts hulking up, hitting several more uppercuts to Rollins before slamming into the mat and shoving Rollins' glove into his mouth before hitting a lariat for a 2 count. Cesaro hits a few more uppercuts and looks for a discus lariat, but is kicked by Rollins. Rollins goes for a curb stomp, but he's met by a scoop slam for a 2 count for Cesaro. Cesaro looks for a neutralizer, but Rollins flips him over his head onto the apron. Cesaro knocks Rollins down and climbs to the top rope. Rollins meets Cesaro up top, but Cesaro knocks Rollins down, hits a splash, but Rollins rolls through for a 2 count. Seth fakes to do a neck breaker, but just smashes Cesaro on the back of the head with a forearm instead for another near fall. Rollins completely loses it at this point and he starts stomping on Cesaro, raking his eyes, and then locks in an armbar submission. Cesaro tries to power out, but Rollins hits him with a Falcon Arrow for a 2 count. Seth fakes a curb stomp and kicks Cesaro in the back of the head for another 2 count. Rollins looks for the curb stomp once more, but Cesaro dodges, looks for a clothesline, but Rollins hits him with a kick. Rollins looks for the curb stomp again, but Cesaro hits him with a discus lariat this time. Both men are down, and it's been a great match so far. Cesaro hits the swing on Rollins, about 14 swings, I think, if I counted correctly. Cesaro gets a Boston Crab locked in, then switches it into a crossface in the middle of the ring, but Rollins rolls over for a 2 count. Cesaro locks in a sharpshooter on Rollins, then stomps on his right arm several times before Rollins gets the quick win with an inside cradle. Rollins wins. Another superb match between these two, no doubt. I was hoping for Cesaro to win and the feud to finally be over, but it looks like we're going to get another match or two between these two. If it's anything like this match, I'm not feeling too negative about that now. I did say in the predictions video that I didn't really want to see them fighting anymore. I wanted to see Cesaro push back up to fight with Roman Reigns, but if they're going to give us matches like this, I'm not too concerned. One thing I am concerned about is the fact that I'm now 0-2 in the predictions. This match gets a 4-star rating, another solid match on the card. After a little chat between the pre-show panel, we now have Alexa Bliss against Shayna Baszler. What sort of creepy shenanigans are we going to see here? We get a pre-match interview with Baszler basically saying she's not scared. Baszler is accompanied to the ring by Nia Jax and Reginald. The match starts out with Alexa strolling around the ring, staring at Shayna. This seems to confuse Shayna, who doesn't know what to do, until Reggie gets on the apron to distract Alexa and break the eye contact and give Shayna the opportunity to hit a clothesline. Baszler starts pummeling Bliss in the corner, but Bliss keeps getting up. Bliss hits Baszler with a forearm, some kicks, and a double knee. Senton on Baszler for a 2 count. Bliss starts staring at Reggie, who's desperate to avoid the eye contact, but just can't seem to keep away. This allows Baszler time to attack Bliss from behind. Bliss is just laughing. Baszler hits a slam for a 2 count, and Bliss is still laughing. Baszler then works Bliss's left arm for a few minutes, but Bliss continues to laugh it off. The story of the match seems to be that Baszler doesn't want to look into Bliss's eyes, and neither does Reggie or Nia. Nobody wants to stare into Alexa's eyes. She seems to have some sort of superpowers that make people do things, as we see a bit later on with Nia Jax. It gets very weird. Stay with me. When Baszler does look in her eyes, she eventually gets hit with a DDT for a 2 count. Baszler gets kicked out of the ring, and Bliss is now staring at Nia Jax, and this is where it gets weird. Nia Jax is on the outside, Bliss is staring at her and seems to be possessing her. Bliss is lifting her right arm up, and then Reggie's right next to Nia. Nia's lifting her right arm up at the exactly same time as Bliss, and then Bliss pulls the right arm across, and Nia slaps Reggie in the face. Very, very odd. Baszler attacks Bliss from behind, but Bliss manages to get an inverted Sister Abigail. Bliss goes up top and hits Twisted Bliss for the win. Not much to say about this. As strange a match as you would expect, with possession and a lot of staring. It was okay for what it was, and on a positive, it gives me the first correct prediction of the night. So I'm 1-2 in the predictions, and I'm going to give this a 3-star rating. It can't be any higher, but they did okay with what they were given, I guess. Next up is the feud that will never die. It's Kevin Owens against Sami Zayn, and things start off with Owens battering Zayn in the corner, but Owens seems to be selling the damage from the Nigerian nail that he received from Commander Aziz on Friday. He's breathing quite heavily and coughing every now and then. Owens whips Zayn off the ropes, hits him with a high elbow and then a senton. Zayn crawls to the outside to catch his breath, but Owens follows and throws him into the barricade. Owens throws Zayn back into the ring, but Zayn kicks Owens when he's getting back in. Zayn hits Owens off the ropes and hits him with a clothesline. Zayn goes for a suplex, but it's blocked and countered into a throw onto the top rope from KO, who then clotheslines Zayn in the corner and cannonballs him for a 2 count. Sami tries to get out of the ring again, but he's stopped this time by Owens. Sami manages to get the upper hand though by throwing Owens into the rope and hitting a senton to the outside of the ring. Owens is favouring the wrist after that. The official tries to keep Sami back, but Sami is having none of it and starts kicking Owens on the ground. Zayn hits Owens with an elbow, causing Owens to roll out to the outside once more. Zayn comes out of the ring, but Owens rolls back in, and Owens gets the upper hand by grounding and pounding on Sami before kicking him several times in the corner. Sami rolls to the outside, but is met with a clothesline from Owens. Owens goes for a senton from the apron to the floor, but Sami gets his knees up. Sami then hits the blue thunderbomb back in the ring for a near fall. Zayn starts clubbing Owens around the back of the head and hits him with right hands in the corner before Owens starts fighting back. Looks for the stunner, but Zayn hits the suplex for another near fall. Sami kicks Owens out of the ring, follows him out, but he's met by a stunner from Owens. Sami Zayn just beats the 10 count, then both men exchange shots with the other while on their knees in the ring. Owens eventually gets the upper hand, stomping Sami to the apron. Owens tries to pull Sami back in the ring, but Sami pulls Owens' arm down across the top rope. He hits the Helluva kick, and Sami Zayn wins. This one was just an out-and-out brawl, as you would expect between two wrestlers with such a storied past. I'm a little bit surprised that Sami managed to get the win, but I'm not too unhappy about it. I'm interested to see what's next for these two. Surely they're not going to continue feuding just continuously for the rest of their career. That's now the third prediction out of 4 that I've got wrong so far. This match gets a 4-star rating, a solid outing, as good as any Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn match has been in the past. Now it's time for the Raw Women's title match, and my overriding thought heading into this one was Charlotte better not win. So it's Rhea Ripley against Charlotte Flair. Before the bell rings, Charlotte grabs the title from the referee, throws it at Rhea and knocks Rhea to the ground. The bell then rings and Charlotte goes for the quick pinfall for a 2 count. Rhea goes outside the ring to collect herself. Rhea and Charlotte then exchange forearms after a back and forth. Ripley gets Flair down with a boot. Rhea goes up top, but she's kicked down by Flair, who then starts stomping Ripley. Flair gets Ripley in a headlock. Rhea tries to escape, but Charlotte keeps a hold, then slams her to the mat. Charlotte goes for a suplex, but Rhea reverses it, but she's then pushed into the corner and clotheslined out of the ring. Back in the ring, Flair goes for 3 successive pins on Ripley for 1 count. Charlotte continuously kicks the leg of Ripley, trying to ground her opponent, then bends Rhea's leg over the bottom rope. Rhea manages to get on top, hitting some short arm clotheslines before ducking Charlotte's clotheslines, headbutting her, and then thrust kicking Flair. Flair is on the apron and manages to get Ripley's leg in another lock on the rope. Ripley escapes and kicks Flair out of the ring. With Charlotte down in the ring, Rhea goes up top and hits a missile dropkick for a 2 count. Ripley then gets a submission locked in on Flair, who reverses and throws Ripley face first into the bottom turnbuckle. Charlotte hits natural selection, tries to use the rope as leverage on the pin just as Ripley kicks out anyway. 2 count. Flair looks for the slam. Ripley tries to reverse into a suplex, but Charlotte escapes with an elbow and then tries a boot to Ripley in the corner. Rhea avoids and hits a suplex of her own to Charlotte. Charlotte's in the corner now. Ripley heads towards her, but she's caught and hit with a backbreaker into a facebuster against the turnbuckle. Charlotte tries a top rope moonsault, but Rhea moves. Flair lands on her feet and hits a standing moonsault instead for a 2 count. Flair works the leg again, but she's nearly caught with an inside cradle for 2. Charlotte hits Rhea with an elbow after missing a kick for another near fall. Flair looks for the figure 4, but Ripley manages to kick her to the apron. Charlotte heads up top again, but she's met by Rhea Ripley, who hits a superplex for another near fall. Both women get to their feet and start exchanging shots before Flair takes control with the Flair chops. She runs at Ripley in the corner, but Ripley moves and Charlotte hits the middle turnbuckle face first. This allows Rhea to hit Riptide for a 2 count. Charlotte just getting a leg on the rope just before 3. And then she rolls out of the ring. Rhea follows Charlotte out of the ring, but has a leg kicked from under her. She's leaning against the steps when Flair drop kicks Rhea's bad leg off the steps. Both women get back into the ring and Charlotte hits a spear, then locks in the figure 4 on Ripley. Rhea manages to make it to the ropes, but Charlotte doesn't release the hold until they both fall to the outside of the ring. Rhea then decides to use the Hell in a Cell tabletopper off the commentary table as a weapon, so Charlotte wins by disqualification. Rhea continues the attack after the bell and eventually hits Riptide on Charlotte in the ring. A disappointing result to a really great match. I'm glad Charlotte didn't win the title, but surely they could have just given Rhea the win against an already solidified star. Maybe they're going to have a couple more matches where Rhea can hopefully win clean. It would have got 4 stars if not for the finish. I'm going to give it 3.5 stars. It's not been a great night for my predictions. That makes it 1 correct result and 4 incorrect results since Charlotte technically wins. And it's main event time now. Ladies man Bobby Lashley against the Scottish historian Drew McIntyre. And of course, I've got Bobby in this one. I don't need this one because getting only 1 prediction correct would just be embarrassing. So Lashley heads straight to the outside of the ring as the bell rings and tries to get something from under the ring, but he's met by Drew, who whips him into the cell and grates his face against it. Drew then drives Lashley back first into the cell and whips him into the ring post. Drew grabs the steps, but he's kicked by Lashley before he can use them. It's Lashley's turn to hit Drew off the cell now. He goes for a suplex, but McIntyre reverses it into a suplex of his own, and Lashley is thrown onto the cell once more. Drew has the steps again and hits Lashley with them this time twice before putting them down. McIntyre rolls Lashley back into the ring, looks for the Future Shock DDT, but Lashley escapes, only to be met by a big boot from Drew McIntyre. Drew then backs Lashley into the corner, then hits him with a belly-to-belly suplex, and Lashley rolls to the outside. Drew gets a kendo stick from under the ring and whacks Lashley with it before holding it across Lashley's throat and ramming him into the cell. Drew grabs a table. This match has been 100 miles per hour since the bell rang, and it doesn't show any signs of stopping. MVP passes Lashley the cane through the cell, and Lashley surprises Drew with it by hitting him in the throat. Drew has set the table up leaning against the side of the cell. That becomes important later. Lashley drives Drew into the cell, then the apron, and then the cell again. Lashley gets on the bottom part of the steps and he's looking for a suplex, but Drew pushes him off into the ring post. Drew then gets Lashley up on his shoulders and hits Lashley with a white noise onto the steps. A nice little callback to Drew's longtime friend Sheamus there. Drew gets another table out from under the ring and sets it up outside the ring in the conventional fashion this time. Just, standard legs up. There you go. Not the leaning against the cell as the other table is, which we've not forgotten about. Drew repeatedly smashes the back of Lashley's head off the cell, climbs on the steps again, but Lashley escapes and creates some separation. It looked like Drew was wanting to suplex Lashley through the table off the steps. Both men hit each other with headbutts while sitting on the steps. Lashley then whips McIntyre into the cell, but McIntyre bounces off it and hits Lashley with his own clothesline. Drew hits Lashley's head off the top part of the steps and rolls him into the ring. Drew is back under the ring and pulls a few steel chairs out, throwing them into the ring. Drew sets one of the chairs up between the top and middle turnbuckle of one of the corners. Drew then goes for Lashley in the other corner, but he's met by an elbow. Drew heads back to Lashley and reverse Alabama slams Lashley onto the steel chair for a 2 count. Drew picks up one of the other chairs and smacks it across Lashley's back. He then heads to the top rope with the chair in his hand, but Lashley catches him and attempts to hurt lock, but is driven into the corner. Then Drew hits a spinebuster for 2. Drew then hits a sit-down powerbomb for another near fall before kicking Lashley out of the ring. He grabs the steps and hits Lashley with them once again. Drew tries to hit Lashley again, but Lashley pushes the steps and Drew's head off the cell wall several times. A brutal looking move. Drew was holding the steps up like this. He had his head in the gap of the steps and Lashley was just pushing on it into the cell. Lashley holds McIntyre against the cell as MVP pushes the kendo stick through from the outside to trap Drew in the corner and allow Lashley to pummel him. So the kendo stick was sort of jabbed through one end of the cell, across McIntyre's throat and coming out the other. Quite a creative use of the kendo stick. Drew eventually escapes out of the kendo stick by simply breaking it, but he's met by an uranagi from Lashley. Lashley rolls Drew back into the ring, grabs a chair and places it in a seated position before hitting Drew with another uranagi, this time on the chair. He hits it a second time, then rolls to the outside to collect a kendo stick. Lashley continuously whacks the back of Drew with the kendo stick, but this hypes Drew up. He hulks up this time. We saw Cesaro hulking up earlier in the night. It's Drew's turn to hulk up. He catches the next swing of the kendo stick and gives Lashley a good old Glasgow kiss. Drew grabs the chair, hits Lashley once, but Lashley sticks a thumb to the eye of McIntyre, then pushes him into the ref, who gets hit by the chair that McIntyre is holding and rolls out of the ring. McIntyre throws Lashley into the chair he set up earlier between the top and middle ropes, then hits the Future Shock DDT, but there's no ref to count the pin. Drew asks the other ref, who is on the outside of the cell, to enter the ring, but this allows Lashley time to get back to his feet. He gets the hurt lock in, but Drew escapes and overhead throws Lashley before smashing him several times with the chair, then hitting him with a claymore. The new official is in the ring. He counts to 2, but he's dragged out of the ring by MVP. Drew is now staring daggers at MVP, who's now been locked inside the cell. Drew hits MVP off the cell, the apron and the ring post before rolling him back into the ring. Drew hits a claymore to MVP and stares at him as he rolls out of the ring. Drew's attention is still focused on MVP as he heads to the outside of the ring. This allows Lashley to lock the hurt lock in once again on the outside. Drew backs Lashley through the table that he set up leaned against the cell wall earlier, and both men are now down. McIntyre's up first though, and he rolls Lashley back into the ring, grabs the chair and hits Lashley with it across the back several times before looking for the claymore, but Lashley drops down to avoid it. McIntyre's on the apron now and he gets thrown through the other table that he set up on the outside. Drew is rolled back into the ring. Lashley's looking for the spear, but Drew avoids it, hits a backslide for a 2 count, then hits another Glasgow kiss on Lashley. Drew hits the Future Shock again, heads to the corner, and he's looking for another claymore, but MVP grabs his leg allowing Lashley to get the roll-up and the victory. Bobby Lashley wins and retains the WWE Championship. Drew McIntyre can no longer challenge for the title again for as long as Bobby Lashley is champion. What a brutal match. Really enjoyable one. They made the right decision to keep the belt on Lashley as well. As I said in my prediction video, Drew needs to fall down the card a little bit and then climb his way back up from the bottom to get another chance of winning the title and to get the crowd back behind him, because I, for one, am not feeling this version of Drew McIntyre. Get rid of the stupid historian, history teacher, Scottish history teacher act that he's got going on and bring back the tough Scotsman. Thankfully, another thing this result means is that I've managed to get 2 predictions correct out of 6, so I'm not that awful at predicting the event. And then the final closing shot of the show was Drew McIntyre looking very, very sad. So overall, I'm going to give this show 4 stars. It was a very good show from start to finish. A nice solid starter with the pre-show and some great matches in between. The 2 cell matches, particularly good. Owens and Zayn, a nice brawl, a bit of a change of pace to everything else on the card. Rollins and Cesaro as well, that was a good match. Ripley and Flair, just disappointing with the finish. The actual match itself was really good. Now, I've not yet decided which events I'm doing predictions for this coming weekend, so feel free to leave suggestions in the comments. We don't have any of the major companies with any pay-per-views this weekend. However, I am leaning towards doing a prediction for Pro Wrestling Noah's event on Saturday. So if you'd be interested in that, let me know in the comment section down below. As always, we'll also be having a look ahead to the other shows that are streaming this coming weekend too. Remember to let me know your thoughts on the show in the comment section down below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Hit the notification bell to stay notified. And I'll see you later in the week for some kind of predictions.